Well, here we are at the Dead Hippie Brewing open mic. Everybody's already gone home because it's about 3 in the morning, and I recorded a comedy set for the Dead Hippie open mic, the virtual open mic, and it was about 20 some minutes long when I was done. I was like, nobody needs that. We're not that desperate yet, okay? I maybe a couple more months of quarantine, which seems completely likely, then perhaps, you're running a little thin on Hulu, and you're like, oh God, I'm just gonna look at that bald guy and feel better about my situation. So I wanted to do a little comedy. My name is Jared Iwi, and I do comedy around town. I have all my events are canceled. I should be in Germany right now. Whether or not I'm gonna get that plane ticket refunded remains to be seen. I was on hold with Expedia for 4 hours, and then when I finally got to the guy, the phone disconnected. Have you? It's weird. Like, you want to believe that you're a stronger, more resilient individual, and then something like that sideswipes you, and you get this out of body view of you, and you're just emotional and vulnerable just because you lost touch with a person you've never met on a phone. And I'm like stabbing at buttons, and that's the thing with digital phones, you just don't get the same feedback. You can't slam it, and if you do, you just broke $1,000 computer. The buttons aren't this, and there's no angry dial. You used to remember when you'd be mad, you'd be like, I'm gonna call Kim right now. You could rip the dial, and so all that anger just trapped inside of me, and I had to call him back. It was an hour and a half then, and they're still trying to resolve the issue, and I just feel. I'm all nothing but feel for everyone right now. I mean, either your job is going away, or your job is just completely overwhelming, or you're at home. And at first you're excited about working from home, and then you realize that your kids are going to be here too. And I should have known that. I knew it was coming, but I didn't really place it in my head. And here we are together. And something I realized is that over time I've built tolerance for kids, but certain hours. Like, I have hours. Dad has hours. I have weekends, evenings, and a very harried hour every weekday morning. Then after that, I soar to work. Like, I remember I'd drop off the little ones at kinder care, and I'd drink the rest of their sippy cup and crank an NPR. Just easy rider, baby. And so now we're all here. Apparently, all licensed to homeschool, like overnight. And homeschooling, I think it has a better name now. But, and I'm going to get to my comedy, which I have a set. I actually have a set. We're getting there. But let me, a good segue would be what homeschooling was. Because now, like, you've got like these sophisticated mothers who have blogs about their curriculum. Today we went to the museum and learned all about the life cycle of the protozoa, and that seems pretty cool. But homeschool kids, when I grew up, it's kind of like a cult for kids. It is weird. I grew up in a little town. Like, you knew everyone. You knew absolutely everyone. You knew more than you should ever know about other people. And so you pretty much thought you had everybody accounted for. Like, we were on a cruise ship, and we had a log, and everybody was there. And like twice a year there'd be a big event, and in would come these like three pasty kids you'd never seen before. They looked like they invented rickets, and they'd be kind of tethered together with a rope, and they'd come in and, like, shielding themselves from the light. Like, who the hell are these people? They were homeschool kids hiding out right amongst us. It was almost like a crime. I remember being like ninth grade and seeing one of them, and she was pretty cute. I'm like, you realize the limited resources as far as hooking up in this town, and you're hiding her? I mean, granted, she's gaunt and looks a little like Iggy Pop, but you shouldn't be doing that to us, okay? We need all the love we could get. And apparently she does too. Get her out of the basement. Did I just take on an Irish accent? Anyway, I don't know if I finished my thought earlier that, I started doing this. It was really long. And then the kids came back, and they wanted to watch Jumanji 2. It holds up pretty well. And so I was like, I'll get up in the morning and do it. And so here we are, and here's my set. What would quarantine be like in the 80s. Like right now, it's a decent time to be quarantined. I mean, we have more TV shows than toilet paper. Our hygiene might be questionable, but shit, we could watch Netflix for 10 years. That's no kidding, 10 years, and not see the same thing twice. My kids, a show's on, they can pause it, they can rewind it, they could watch the whole season if they'd like. Us in the 80s, like Magnum PI was on once. And whether or not you were going to see it again, you didn't know. It was up to some higher power in Hollywood whether or not that was going to come back in the summer. And really, who was going to be watching TV the summer? Magnum PI, the glaring light from that tall Caucasian, it shot off the screen and into space. And whether you were going to catch it really determined on how aggressive you were going to be in that hour of primetime viewership. You may remember this, but commercial breaks. This was no joke. Quarantine would have been probably a more violent, more competitive place than all of us with our screens doing our own thing, whatever. Because in our house, you had one TV and you watched whatever the largest, most powerful person was watching. So you'd sidle up next to your father and take in MASH, which was like 27 minutes of melatonin. And the MASH was hard as a kid because you see your dad cry during a sitcom. And you're like, the Cosby Show, you had one serious episode per season. And you knew that. And it was awkward. And it was like a feminine hygiene commercial that went on for half an hour and nobody. And then if you had my dad, he felt like he actually would be like this. And he would turn and lecture you all on the use of drugs and or, thoughts of suicide or whatever the topic had to be. I don't know if that was in the contract of 80s sitcoms, but you had the one heavy one. Whatever you watched was whatever someone else was watching, unless you were a 2 TV household, and that was not our case. But the commercial break, this was huge. Like you had 2.5 to 3 minutes to get back in front of the TV, and it was aggressive. If you had to pee and get a snack, and then make it back to the one TV. I mean, for one, you had to sacrifice washing your hands. I'm sorry. If there's disease in the world, it was likely 80s kids wiping their hands on their pants as they ran to the fridge to contaminate everyone to get to the TV. And listen, it was a big deal. If you were not within TV range, by the time the local news promo came on, you might as well be shunned. Like, they didn't want you to, they'd be like, just stay away. There was no more aggressive STFU than if you were about to interrupt some Higgins witticisms on Magnum PI. I think my brother got grounded for talking during Simon and Simon once. And not like a light grounding, like an 80s grounding where you were just pounded into the ground. But the family would start yelling at you like, come on, what are you doing? Get over here. Because, yeah, sure, it would be bad if you missed part of Magnum, If you walked in a little late to Dukes of Hazzard, I mean, that show didn't require a ton of your attention. So it would be bad if you missed it, but even worse, if you were that person crinkling snacks when they come out of commercial, the local news promo, and you could tell too, you knew we were like dogs, we were like Whitefang. We knew the intonations of the voice. The local news promo started out low and serious. There's death in your food supply, we'll tell you more. And then they'd go up, add 30 minutes, on KAZ. And so when they started getting that high intonation, you'd either shut your shiz up and calm down, or if you weren't ready to, just do a U-turn and go find someplace to sit quietly, because you would get ostracized. You'd get shunned. I mean, you'd get more respect if you farted a eulogy than if you made noise right when Murder, She Wrote was about to reveal the true suspect. Yeah, so what would we be doing? You had some people in the 80s, in the early 80s, they had a remote control, but it was tethered to the TV. Which brings me to the second part of what would we be doing with quarantine in the 80s is telephones. Telephones. I'm going to pretend like I have a stool and a water bottle. I think it's like 4 a.m. This is how we live when there's kids in the house. All the time. In horror movies, the kids are always scary. Like that's what it's getting to. Like I can hear their footsteps and I'm like, oh God. But phones. Like right now, my oldest has a phone. When he turned 12, we got him a phone. He can communicate, and that he can just, if he has something going on, he can just go somewhere with his phone, anywhere with his phone. He could walk to the park with his phone. And I'm actually thinking that maybe during this quarantine time, we could maybe do a tutorial to some of the younger phone users that there's an actual phone in the phone. Not their fault. There's so much in there. Who would know that you could, talk to people. But in the 80s, you had a phone. Like, not everybody had a phone. Had a phone. Now, I should admit that we were a bit lucky. We had a basement phone and a kitchen phone. But for whatever reason, no one called unless it was dinner. My dad was kind of Gestapo about people calling during dinner. So you'd be sitting down and the phone would ring and everybody would just look around hoping it wasn't for them. Because either my dad would be in a bad mood and he would pick it up and be mean to the person. Unless it was for him, then he would talk for 2.5 hours and we'd all just sit there waiting for it to come back a little bit hungry and agitated. Or, God forbid, it would be a girl and he would get there first. So when the phone rang and you just had to go ahead and take responsibility for it and get up and get that, you would push your mother out of the way to get to it. Because my dad was when he wasn't working, he was a bit bored, and when you live in the middle of nowhere, your kids are as much entertainment as the one TV channel we got. So especially if it were a girl, he would I'd be standing there doing a desperate little dance trying to get to the phone, and he'd be doing that thing where he'd be holding me off, saying such horrible things as, he has tummy issues right now. He's working on some stuff on the potty and he'll get back to you. And that's not a lie. This happened. But in the 80s, you had the one phone and you couldn't go wherever you wanted. You had about 8 feet. And of course, everybody's at dinner, right there, and they're watching. They'd all watch. They'd be mid-fork, just watching and say, who is it? Who is it? Who is it? All the whisper talk. Look, we developed the whole universal language. Remember, you had parents if you know what this means. This means just be quiet, and then this means get me a pen. I can't even do it to get. Whoa, I've lost my 80s phone skill. Getting a pen, it was a huge deal. The whole house would be running around, get a pen. I don't know where a pen is. But you have everybody would be watching you while you're on the phone, and you've got 8 foot of cord. And I don't know if you ever talk. You try to get so far away that the phone would be like this. You couldn't talk anymore. You could just hear him, and you're leaning away to it. If you had to say something, you had to turn and say a thing, and you're leaning away. Everybody's looking at you, and then your middle school girlfriend's like, I said I love you. Can you say you love me back? And you couldn't. You couldn't. Well, for whatever reason, it was physically impossible to say I love you when you were 11. I wasn't ready for it, Nikki, okay? And so you're leaning away. They're asking you to say I love you. The whole family's watching, what's going on? And this, as a kid, this had no power. You had no snap power, no phone snap power. I couldn't wait till one day I'd have phone snap power, but it doesn't matter because everybody's on their own phone everywhere else and they don't give a damn who I'm talking to. And so you could have said, I'm going to just take the phone downstairs, which is really dangerous in a multi-phone house because then everybody just gets on the phone and listens to what is going on. Every sibling would say, no, I hung it up. They would do a pretend hang up and then listen to what was happening. And where I grew up, we had party lines where the neighbors could listen to what was happening. And sometimes you would get a neighbor that would say, yeah, Jared, could you just tell her you love her because I need to make a phone call. We had this guy who would fall asleep listening to your phone call, which once he started snoring, the pressure was off. You knew Earl wasn't listening, and it was kind of soothing. You're like, oh, that's nice. It's like an elder watching over me during this tumultuous issue I'm having on the phone about expressing my affection. The phones would be, phones in quarantine right now. Just be that all of us standing around one phone, waiting to have a conversation with anyone. Please. I got in trouble in middle school with 900 numbers. me and a friend of mine, we dialed one in the nurse's office at the school, and an actual human picked up. And she was like, "Hello, what can I do for you?" And we were like, "Everything." And then we just threw the phone and ran. Well, the phone was off the hook for days, and the phone bill was immense. Like our high school probably could have had like a new gym. The kids could have a new cafeteria now, but they had to write a check to 1-900, Spank Factory, and yeah, and then I didn't get in trouble for it. They actually blamed a guy. You know who you are. They blamed a guy who was just excited to get suspended. So that worked out great. And that's probably something else we would be doing during a quarantine, is blowing the last of our reserves on like a psychic or something. Which actually I wouldn't mind a psychic right now. It is lots of mystery. Okay, another final. No, you know what? I'm just gonna wrap it up because Jesus, nobody needs this. I was gonna talk about. I guess I'm done. I had another bit. Well, thank you for coming out to Dead Hippie Brewing for the open mic night, and just stay healthy. And listen, I know sometimes sometimes you just want to be manlier than you need to be. And I think the strongest thing you could do is just show some restraint and stay inside and try to mash the curb or whatever, crush the curve, so our hospitals and doctors don't get absolutely overrun. Because this looks like it could take a while. And I'm just going to have to enjoy my free time here at about 4 a.m. And we'll talk to you very soon. That's not a good way to end this, is it? Oh, you know what? Speaking of 80s, quarantine in the 80s, I just remember some wise words that were imparted to me. You don't know what you got until it's gone. So enjoy the children.